They say every courtroom has its own kind of silence, the kind that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. That day, I could feel every heartbeat echoing through me as I sat there, facing the man I once loved, and the lawyer who thought he already won. His smirk. God, that smirk wasn't just arrogance. It was mockery, like I was just another weak, broken woman he'd crush before lunch, but he had no idea what was coming. Before I tell you how I turned that smirk into pure panic, let me ask you something. Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever been so hurt that you start smiling? Not out of peace, but because you finally know how to destroy a lie? If you have, then you're going to want to hear this. Oh, and before we go any further, if stories of poetic justice and sweet revenge make your heart race just a little faster, you might want to hit that like button now. Trust me, you'll want to stay till the end. Because what happened in that courtroom wasn't luck. It was strategy. It was quiet power. And the moment I slid my final piece of evidence across the table, right then, the color drained from his lawyer's face, and my husband realized he'd just lost everything he tried to steal from me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind a little to where it all began. You know, people always say marriage is about trust, about love, about finding your person. For a long time I believed that too. I believed him. He wasn't just my husband. He was my safe place, my biggest supporter. Or at least, that's what I thought. We met in that cliché, movie-like way, accidentally bumping into each other, laughing it off, feeling like fate had a hand in it. He was charming, confident, and he made me feel seen. And when you've spent your life being the quiet one, feeling seen can be addictive. At first, everything was perfect. Dinners, late-night talks, little notes left on the fridge. He said all the right things, and I wanted so badly to believe every word. But slowly, things started to shift. You ever notice how small changes sneak up on you? The way someone starts checking your phone just out of curiosity. Or how they say, "I'm just trying to protect you," when what they really mean is, "I'm starting to control you." Yeah, that was him. I brushed it off. We all do, right? We make excuses because we want to hold on to the version of them we first met. The good version, but that version had disappeared, and in its place stood a man who needed to feel powerful by making me small. He started controlling the finances, telling me how to dress, when to speak, even what friends were bad influences. Every argument somehow became my fault. Every tear I shed was called drama. And here's the twisted part. He could turn it off like a switch. Around others, he was perfect, charming, helpful. Everyone loved him. I'd watch him shake hands, flash that rehearsed smile, and I'd wonder, how did no one else see it? How could everyone think I was the problem? Maybe that's what broke me most. The silence. The isolation. I started doubting my own mind. That's the real danger of manipulation. It doesn't just destroy your peace, it rewrites your reality. But somewhere deep inside, I still had a spark left, a tiny whisper saying, "You're not crazy, you're not wrong, you're just being played." And that whisper became my turning point. I didn't know it yet, but it was the beginning of the end, for him. Once you start noticing the cracks, you can't unsee them. That's exactly what happened to me. It began with the late-night calls he'd take in the other room, whispering like a teenager sneaking out after curfew. Then the unexplained receipts, hotel stays, expensive dinners, things that had nothing to do with business. And when I asked questions, he laughed. Actually laughed. Said I was paranoid, insecure, maybe even a little crazy. You know the kind of laugh that makes you doubt your own heartbeat? Yeah, that one. But I wasn't crazy. I was waking up. One night I waited for him to fall asleep and checked his phone. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. And there it was. A name I didn't recognize. Dozens of messages dripping with lies, promises, plans, pictures. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. And yet I didn't cry. Not this time. I just stared at the screen until the sun came up and realized the man snoring beside me was a stranger wearing my husband's face. You'd think that would have been enough to walk away. But no. When you've spent years being emotionally manipulated, walking away feels like escaping a maze blindfolded. He had control of everything. Our money, our home, even my reputation. He'd already told people I was unstable, that I imagined things. His lawyer, that smug snake, encouraged it. Together, they painted me as the hysterical wife desperate for attention. So, I played along, smiled when they lied, nodded when they mocked me, let them believe I was weak. Because while they were busy underestimating me, I was collecting proof, carefully. Quietly. Every text, every email, every suspicious transaction. I bought a small external drive and named it Recipes, just in case he snooped. But inside, I was storing his downfall. Oh, and here's a funny thing. Whenever I looked at his lawyer, that man's confidence almost made me laugh. He strutted around like a rooster, quoting laws he barely understood, talking about destroying my case. The irony? He was about to walk straight into the trap I was building with his client's own lies. And trust me, there were plenty of lies. Fake tax documents, hidden money transfers, even a secret apartment lease. My husband thought he'd outsmart me. He didn't realize I'd spent years studying his patterns, memorizing his moves. I had turned into the one thing he never expected, dangerous in silence. The day I filed for divorce, he looked amused. His lawyer smirked, already drafting the victory speech in his head. They thought I was walking into a slaughterhouse. But I wasn't the lamb anymore. I was the storm coming through the door, and they had no idea. Every time I replay that moment, their smug faces, their arrogance, it makes me smile. Because they were about to find out that when a woman's been pushed to her breaking point, she doesn't just break. She rebuilds, with fire in her hands. It all came crashing down one afternoon, like a movie scene I never asked to star in. I was in the kitchen when I got the message. He'd officially filed for divorce. Not a conversation, not even a warning. Just a notification that my marriage was over and my life was up for negotiation. And to add salt to the wound, he'd frozen our joint account. My own money, gone overnight. The man who once promised to protect me had turned me into an opponent. I remember staring at that screen, my heart pounding but my mind oddly calm. Fear had burned out long ago. What replaced it was focus. Pure cold focus. I poured myself a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, and whispered, "Game on." That night I met with my lawyer, a quiet, strategic woman who didn't waste words. I laid everything out, every document, every message, every secret he thought was buried. She listened without interrupting, then leaned back and smiled. "We don't just have a case," she said. "We have a confession trail." I almost laughed. After years of being silenced, that moment felt like breathing for the first time. Over the next few weeks, I worked like a detective. I dug through bank statements, online transactions, private messages. I traced his business trips that led to luxury resorts and private dinners for two. The deeper I went, the more I realized this wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. He had been moving money into hidden accounts under fake business names. Every lie was documented. Every secret had a timestamp. And yet on the outside, I stayed quiet. I played the part he expected. The calm, defeated wife. When his lawyer sent mocking letters or made generous settlement offers, I smiled politely. Let them underestimate me. There's no greater power than being seen as harmless when you're holding dynamite. Then came the day before the hearing. He texted me, "Let's not make this ugly. Take what I offer and move on." I looked at that message and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not sadness, power. He thought he was offering mercy, but he was really giving me motivation. That night, I went through every piece of evidence one last time. Organized, labeled, airtight. I didn't sleep a minute, but I wasn't tired. I was ready. The next morning, I walked into that courtroom like a soldier walking into battle. Not to destroy, but to defend what was mine. He was already there, leaning back with that familiar smug grin. His lawyer nodded at me like I was a predictable plot twist, and maybe I was just not the kind they expected. I took a deep breath, looked at them both, and thought, you built this war. Now watch me win it. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in energy, like all the warmth had been drained out of the room and replaced with tension. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor as I walked to my seat, my palms steady, my heartbeat oddly calm. Across the room, my husband and his lawyer whispered to each other, both of them smirking like they were already celebrating. That smirk again, the same one I'd seen 100 times when he thought I was too naive to fight back. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. My husband's lawyer stood up first, confident, rehearsed, smooth like an actor in a low-budget drama. He started with his opening statement, painting me as an emotionally unstable woman driven by revenge. I almost laughed. It was impressive how easily lies rolled off his tongue. Every word was polished, practiced, poisonous. He talked about how I'd mismanaged funds, how I was making baseless accusations, and how my husband was the real victim of my imagination. I didn't flinch, not once, because that's what they wanted, to see me break, to see fear. Instead, I looked straight ahead, calm and collected. And I'll tell you something. Nothing unnerves arrogant people more than a woman who doesn't react. Then came my turn. My lawyer stood, calm but fierce, and started laying the groundwork. The judge leaned forward, intrigued. We began with the financial statements, innocent-looking pages that held the first cracks in their perfect story. Mrs. A., could you please explain this transaction? My lawyer asked, handing me a document. I did, in detail, with dates, amounts, and purpose. Every single figure was accurate, every sentence measured. My husband's lawyer objected a few times, but each time the judge waved him off. His confidence started to fade just a little. The smirk softened into confusion. I could almost see the gears turning in his head. Then we moved to the messages. Those late-night texts, those flirty conversations, those not-so-subtle photos. The courtroom grew heavy as they were read aloud. My husband's face changed color, first red, then pale. The lawyer adjusted his tie, his voice suddenly less smooth, less sure, and just when they thought it couldn't get worse, I dropped the real bombshell, the hidden bank account, the one tied to his fake business identity. I watched as the document hit the table in front of them. His lawyer picked it up, scanned it, blinked, then blinked again. His lips parted, but no words came out. The judge took it next and raised an eyebrow. Mr. R10, can you explain this? Silence. You could feel the shift in the room, the kind that makes everyone hold their breath. My husband tried to stammer something about a misunderstanding, but it was too late. My lawyer presented the trail, emails, timestamps, transfers, all leading back to him, and that's when it happened. The lawyer who had mocked me, belittled me, and rolled his eyes at every word I'd said, lost his smirk, completely. His jaw tightened, his eyes darted to his client like he wanted to disappear. The judge leaned back, sighing heavily, then looked directly at me. Mrs. Dirty Yank, I believe we've heard enough. In that moment, the silence was deafening, but not heavy like before. This silence was satisfying. It was justice settling in the air. As we wrapped up, the judge announced that my evidence was sufficient and credible. The settlement would be revised in my favor. Custody, assets, reputation, everything he tried to take from me came back, tenfold. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just stood up, gathered my documents, and walked past them. But as I passed my husband's lawyer, I paused. just long enough to meet his eyes. I tilted my head slightly and said, "That smirk doesn't suit you anymore." He looked away. My husband sank in his chair, and me? I walked out of that courtroom lighter than I'd felt in years. But as I reached the door, a thought crossed my mind. This wasn't the end. Not for me. This was the beginning of something new, something powerful. The moment the gavel came down, it felt like the air itself shifted. You know that instant when your lungs fill for the first time after holding your breath too long? That's what it felt like. Relief. Power. Justice. My husband stared straight ahead, expressionless. But I could see it. The tremor in his hands. The way his jaw clenched when the judge's words sank in. His lawyer, that once cocky showman, avoided my gaze completely. The same man who walked into court smirking now looked like he'd aged 10 years in an hour. As we stepped out into the hallway, reporters and onlookers whispered, but I barely heard them. My focus was sharp, laser clear. This wasn't about humiliation anymore. It was about closure, about balance being restored. My husband had tried to bury me under lies, but I'd handed those lies back to him wrapped in evidence and truth. He approached me once we were outside. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his voice, just desperation. "You didn't have to do this," he muttered. I looked at him, calm, almost pitying. "Oh, I really did," I said softly, "because you never thought I could." Then I turned and walked away, leaving him to stand there in the shadow of his own downfall. It's strange how justice doesn't always look like celebration. It's quiet. It's steady. It seeps in slowly, like sunlight through blinds after a long, dark night. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just felt free. For years he'd made me question my sanity, my worth, my instincts. And now, standing on the courthouse steps, I finally believed in myself again. Later, my lawyer joined me, her tone almost playful. "I think you made quite an impression," she said. I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "No," I replied. I just reminded them who they were dealing with. But the real turning point wasn't just the court ruling. It was what came after. I went home, sat in the quiet, and realized the silence no longer scared me. It felt peaceful. I brewed a cup of coffee, the same way I had the day he filed for divorce. But this time, it tasted different. Stronger. Like me. I took the documents, tucked them into a folder, and stored them away. Not as trophies, but as reminders. Proof that truth may take time, but it never loses its strength. And here's the thing. They thought they were fighting a woman scorned. But I wasn't fighting out of anger. I was fighting for every woman who's ever been told she's too emotional, too dramatic, or too weak to win. When people tell me I was brave, I smile. Because bravery isn't loud, it's silent persistence. It's staying calm when they expect you to scream. It's building your case when they think you're broken. That's what justice looked like for me. Not revenge, not rage, just quiet, undeniable truth. The days after the hearing felt almost unreal. For so long, my life had been chaos, constant tension, constant fear, and suddenly, it was just quiet. The kind of quiet that used to make me anxious now felt peaceful, like the world had finally stopped spinning just long enough for me to catch my breath. I remember waking up the next morning and realizing I didn't have to look over my shoulder anymore. No more walking on eggshells, no more pretending to be okay. I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise. And for the first time in years, it felt like the world was mine again. Simple things, music, laughter, silence, had meaning again. It's funny how freedom doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes softly, in the moments you once overlooked. But here's the truth no one tells you. Even victory carries scars. There were nights when I'd replay everything in my mind, wondering how I'd let it go that far, wondering how many signs I had ignored. But healing isn't about pretending it never happened. It's about accepting that it did and realizing it doesn't define you anymore. I started writing again, journaling at first. Then slowly, I began helping others going through similar situations. Women afraid to speak up, people unsure of their worth. Sharing my story wasn't just therapy, it was a responsibility. Because if my silence once protected his lies, then my voice now would protect someone else's truth. Every so often I'd think of him, my ex-husband, and that courtroom. Not with hatred, but with clarity. He didn't just lose a case that day. He lost control. Control over me, over the story, over the illusion he'd built so carefully. And that's the sweetest kind of justice, when the truth not only exposes a lie but liberates you from it. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that pain can either poison you or push you. And when you stop trying to rewrite what hurt you and start rebuilding from it, you become unstoppable. I'm not the same woman who walked into that courtroom trembling. I'm stronger, sharper, quieter, but in a powerful way. And if you've ever been through something like this, I want you to remember, survival isn't about escaping the storm. It's about learning you were the thunder all along. Sometimes I still think about that moment in court. The smirk, the silence, the truth hitting harder than any lie ever could. It reminds me that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, I'm done being afraid. And maybe that's why you're here too, because deep down, you know what it's like to fight quietly, to endure until the right moment to rise. If my story reached you, even a little, then let it remind you of this. The people who break you don't get to define you. You do. Your truth, your calm, your comeback, that's the real revenge. And if you've ever been in a place where you felt powerless, I want you to know, you're not. You just haven't shown them what you're capable of yet. So, if stories like this one make you believe in strength, in justice, in second chances, then make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes a single story can remind someone else that they too can fight and win.